As a busy community of people where we are doing so much at work and at home, I wanted to bring you a treat today. I have my wonderful friend and published author, April Graff, that is going to walk us through how to uncomplicate our plate. Now, you might be thinking, Anne, why are we talking nutrition on the What If It Works podcast? Well, I will tell you that I know when I am not at my best, when I am not creative, when I am not thriving, when I am feeling stuck and blah, it's because my nutrition and my water intake is lacking. And so this episode absolutely has to do with you as someone who is out there in the workforce, because I think we could tie a lot of our frustration and our miscommunication to potentially undernourished individuals. And so I bring you this episode and interview with dietitian April Graff. Welcome back to the What If It Works podcast. I am so pumped for today. We have a guest with us, April Graff, who is a registered dietitian. And let me tell you, she's a good friend of mine as well. She has been someone who is always looking out for other people and really trying to serve people in different ways, right? So showing recipes online and giving tips on how to create healthy family meals. And she has taken all of that experience and excitement and put it into a lovely book. April Graff, you are a published author. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm great. It feels great. That's the first time in a very public way I've been introduced as a published author. So thank you for that moment.
You are so welcome. April has come out with the book Uncomplicate Your Plate. And now this podcast, right, is for a lot of busy entrepreneurs or people who are managing other people and giving a lot of their time and energy into other people. And April and I are going to have a conversation today about how you can save some of that time, nourish yourself so that you can be your best self. Let's start off with April. Where did the idea come from? What were you hoping to give out to the world with this book?
So this book has changed a lot since its inception. I actually started, I don't know if panic writing is the right word, but I felt this urgent pull in my heart to start writing on my actual cell phone. I was on an airplane and just had this want, this need. I'm like, I need to get something out. And so I started on an airplane writing about the uncomplicate your plate portion of this book. So just really simplifying nutrition. It was a message that a lot of people kept asking me about. And I'm like, oh, honey, you are complicating this too much. And so I started writing that portion of it. And then it also morphed into like the basis of nutrition and then more of the how to actually get that nutrition information in your body. Because most of us know general nutrition recommendations, but exactly like you said, we are busy humans with a lot on our plate and a lot on our schedule and a lot of just things that take away our time and our knowledge and our education in that. And so it morphed from, I don't want to say just a nutrition book, but just a nutrition book into actually a workbook on teaching people how to meal plan. And then once you have that plan, how do you bring that plan to life? So it really is kind of a three-part book in getting people the information they need, the tools to do it, and some of the skills to bring you there.
Yes. And I love that you're talking about nutrition in a way that does feel sciency. And I love one of your comments on Amazon right now is you took the sciency part of nutrition and health and metabolism and put it in a way that all of us can digest it so that we can really understand it and then apply it. I think so many times there are books out there that are giving you great information. And yes, it's opening up your mind to new knowledge, but this is going to help you apply it. And then after you apply it, assess what you did and then reapply what you've learned from taking those steps, which I really appreciated. The learning piece of this book, it's not just here's a bunch of information, now go do with it what you may. It's let's learn together, let's struggle together, let's reassess together, and so that you can actually get going and feel like you're not behind when you get started and you pick up this book. And I know you mentioned like a lot of people have an idea about nutrition. I think many of us listening to this podcast learned about nutrition in grade school, right?
Yeah.
With the pyramid, the food
Hmm.
pyramid, which
Hmm.
we now know is quite outdated
Yeah.
and not necessarily helping us create healthy habits. And so I think what you did really, really well that I really want to, dive into here is how can we uncomplicate it and make
Hmm.
it a lot easier? So first off,
Hmm.
who did you write this book for and what are you hoping they walk away with in the end?
So I have three active children and they're in sports and all kinds of things. And seeing the families that are like their teammates and the struggles that they were having, the questions they were having. It wasn't just about the sports nutrition on how to fuel the athlete, but just struggling, as you know, like I get done with work at 5 o'clock and I have to be someplace else at 5:15 and we're not getting home till 8 o'clock. We got to eat something. And so I really wrote the book to everyone who is feeling the hustle and the hurt from that 5 p.m. till 8 p.m. and just how to actually get food in your body that nourishes you, that helps you, that gives you something positive, doesn't just fill the void in your gut, but actually helps your brain function better, stabilizes your mood. Like I want to be a better mom and I can't do that when I am hangry. I can't do that when I feel the urge to swing through the drive-through, when I'm throwing granola bars to the back seat. And so that book really is for all of us, whether you have kids or not, whether you are just wanting to do better. But in essence, the person I wrote it to are those busy working families who are in it, in the
Yeah.
muck.
One thing I took away from it, about halfway through, all of a sudden I felt myself being like, I could do this. I could do
Mhm.
this. And when you mentioned like the busy families running from place to place, I remember being proud that we could swing in to fast food
Yeah.
because growing up, my parents raised four children and there was no fast food. Fast
Yeah.
food was for birthdays and that was it. Like on your birthday, you got to pick where we were going to go eat out, right? And it was so exciting. It wasn't about convenience, it was about something new that mom and dad can't make at home.
Mhm.
Fast forward 30 years, and now it's about convenience. And I was proud that I could swing into the McDonald's and buy my kids a meal financially, but didn't really realize what was then lacking. Nothing against McDonald's, but what was really lacking by not providing them a meal that makes them their best selves, which I love that you say that a couple times in the book of when you've got energy, when you feel nourished, you can show up as your best self. Wouldn't we want that for our kids too? It was like,
Absolutely.
yes, yes. Your book is broken down into three parts. And the first part is build your plate. And I really want us thinking about in the book, you do a nice job of depicting the plate. And how would you suggest breaking that up? That again, if I grew up knowing the food pyramid, you're suggesting a little bit of a difference in that. So tell me about building your plate. What do we want to do?
Yeah, so building your plate really is about giving your body the nutrients, the small bits and pieces that it needs to do what it's built to do what it's made to do. And a lot of the foods that we tend to put in our body have calories, have carbs or protein, but they don't have all the little nutrients. And so the best way to do that is through vegetables, through non-starchy vegetables. Those suckers are loaded with all the bits and pieces that your body needs to do all the amazing things we ask it to do every day. And so, very simply put, half of our plates every day, ideally, are a non-starchy vegetable, which means half the food that you plan for, half the food that you put in your shopping cart should be a non-starchy vegetable. And then we do still want to focus on those carbohydrates, which give us energy. They can give us some fiber and those other nutrients. And so those take up about 25% of our plate. And then, of course, protein, which is really getting its glory right now in, kind of health and wellness. And 25% of your plate is still prioritizing protein. That will give you the adequate grams of protein you need, but also help keep your energy levels stable, work on that gut health. So, simply put, 50% vegetable, 25% carbohydrate, 25% protein. It's pretty as uncomplicated as I could make it.
I was just about to say that. I was going to say, talk about uncomplicating it, because what you're not saying is you need this many grams and you need this much of this
Mhm.
one thing. You're saying, take a look at the plate and divide it out. And
Yep.
does it look, not does it measure, but does
Correct.
it look like about 50% of your plate has those vegetables,
Mhm.
non-starchy vegetables? Give me examples of some non-starchy vegetables.
So, non starchy vegetables are really all of the vegetables out there except for potatoes, and that's potatoes of all kinds and all the potato products. So, sweet potatoes, white potatoes, French fries, tater tots, hash browns, like all those good things. So, potatoes, corn, peas, and winter squash, like acorn squash, butternut squash, etc. So, the ones that do count as those non starchy vegetables are your lettuces and tomatoes and carrots and green beans and cabbage and Brussels sprouts, peppers, onions, mushrooms, all the other ones that are there because they have really that good fiber is kind of the nutrient du jour to really highlight and the benefits that we get from the blood sugar stabilization, that good gut health, and overall health and wellness.
I loved reading this. I chuckled out loud when you were talking about corn being in the carb category. Now, I think I knew that, but growing up, corn was on my plate probably 3 to 4 days a week because it was a
Mhm.
vegetable that all of us kids would eat. A vegetable, that's in quotes
Yes,
for
ma'am.
those just listening. That was just right, a vegetable for me as a child. And now realizing, oh, so when I go to KFC, by the way, KFC was my selection on my birthday of where we went out to eat, which you laugh
Okay.
about now. But that was my thing, age like 10 through 15, man. We were going to KFC for my birthday.
Love it.
Um, but right, so you're looking at that and you're going, okay, potatoes with gravy, with fried chicken, with a bun with butter and corn.
Mhm.
Like that
Mhm.
was my meal.
Yep.
And so when I was reading this, I was just chuckling like, okay, we need to store that piece of information of let's make sure we can have corn, but that would be our carb. Let's get some vegetables mixed in there as well.
Correct. Oh, I love that so much.
Yeah.
Yes, corn counts as your carb because of what it brings you, right? It brings you carbohydrate. It'll raise your blood sugar. It's a great quality carbohydrate, but we got to count it where it lies, if you will. Yeah.
I will say, April, you do such a good job of, in this book of talking to me like I do understand how the body works and nutrition. And then you kind of break it down for me again of like, now let's give you a metaphor. Now let's give you something you can picture, which is so nice for me because I do get a little lost in
Yeah.
some types of like science information. Like, what does that mean?
Mhm.
What does that really mean? And I think the
Mhm.
metaphors you use in this book really help me to get on board and understand, how food is digested and how this works with your metabolism and what types of nutrients you really do want to bring into your body so that you can show up. Fun fact, I'm excited we have our podcast interview today. I just did a blood draw last week for my own health and wellness, just to check in. Where are we? And what was interesting is some of the feedback that came back from my lab work was literally fixable through diet. Like a
There we
lot of
go.
it was fixable through diet. So then to pick this up and read through and be like, there we are. There's that vitamin. Oh, there's that vitamin. Okay. This isn't as hard. as complicated as we think it is. It really is just taking the time to understand it and then apply it, which in part two, you do so well. So part two is all about meal planning. And I loved you have a little quote that kind of stands out in there that says, by not meal planning, you're forcing yourself to do it every single day in a more chaotic time. And you even describe later in the paragraph about your meal planning during crunch time. Even if you say, oh, I don't meal plan, that's too hard for me. Well,
Mhm.
you are 10 minutes before you serve the food you're serving. You are then meal planning,
Yep.
and it's chaotic and it's crunch
Mhm.
time and it increases your stress. And so, give us some tips about meal planning. How can this help us be more confident and calm and focused? Which I love how you use those words throughout this book. Like, that is
Mhm.
really what you're gaining as you are reading and consuming April's content, is that ability to focus and calm down and make decisions that help you be confident about your plate. But give us a few tips that you had either in the book or just in general on meal planning.
So, I've been a dietitian for 17 years and I talk to the masses. I hear where people are at and I see their struggles. And you're exactly right. People are meal planning, even who say, I don't meal plan. Just because you don't write it down on a sheet of paper or have your plan, like, a decision needs to be made on what you're eating at every point before that meal. And so, kind of as I was growing into figuring out of necessity how to plan for my family, what I realized is most meal planning advice, and most of us as we're starting out, one, we don't give ourselves enough grace to learn something new.
Mm,
Right? Especially those of us who feel like we're like high functioning professionals. I'm good at my job. I know what I'm doing. I've been parenting for a while. Like we feel like we're good at things and we don't want to admit or we don't want to be okay with being terrible. Right? Like,
yeah,
we just don't want to admit to being green. And so giving yourself some grace and saying, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to learn. I might be really bad for a hot minute, but every day is an opportunity to figure out what worked and what didn't work. And we're going to adjust from there. But people are they're starting at the wrong step. We're starting with, what do you want to eat? What flavor do you want to taste? And that is not the most important factor because it's not the most influential factor, especially if time is tight. So you got to start with when.
mm,
When are you going to eat and when are you going to cook and cut and chop? Because if your schedule is really full, if you have, again, maybe it's sports practices, maybe you're traveling, maybe you're going out to eat, maybe you have a work meeting, you might not have from 5 p.m. till 6 p.m. to eat or to cook your meal. And so you have to start with what pockets of time are available to you. And once you know that, then you can find things that can slip in there. And then the second piece that for my family and a lot of other families who are driving around their town,
yeah,
dropping children off all over the world, is where. And that seems like a super silly thing to think about. You're like, of course, I'm going to eat at my house. Of course, I'm going to prepare my food at my house. That seems silly. But once you're living it, that's not the case. So,
yeah,
where might mean the parking lot, the where might mean the dance studio, the where might be the soccer pitch, the hockey field, the basketball court, the volleyball tournament. The where could very likely be not your home. And so once you've identified that, then you can work on finding meals and suggestions and foods that fit there. But starting with the what do I feel like? Well, I feel like tacos, I feel like spaghetti, is going to cause you to not have the time and not probably be able to eat spaghetti while driving your daughter to soccer practice.
yes. I think the other thing that you're bringing up that I think a lot of us don't really realize is, if I am driving Ella to soccer and I'm sitting there to watch her play soccer and then I'm taking her home, well, where's my husband and my son? They're
Mhm,
at home. Are they
mhm,
literally waiting for us?
mhm.
And then nobody gets to eat? until 8 p.m.
Yep.
And so this idea of, yes, we want family meals to be together. And
Mm-hmm.
we know that that's important to a lot of families, but that's not always reality.
Right.
But that doesn't mean Dad and Landon are going to have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. By the way, I did appreciate a good peanut butter and jelly sandwich can fit on your plate in this book.
Yes, it can.
Right. But instead of thinking of it that way, like you said, think of, okay, on Tuesday night when Ella has soccer, let's start there. Now, what are we going to have? What can we prep in advance? Who can eat when, right? And where, and all of that good stuff. And I know that sounds like maybe a lot, but if you can figure that out on a Sunday night,
Yep.
just think of how your week goes so much better because you're not
Mm-hmm.
stressing at 4 p.m. that
Mm-hmm.
everybody has to eat before I leave to go take her to soccer.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I loved that sense of calm that can create with that little bit of planning in
Mm-hmm.
advance. The other thing I love that you did in this book is sometimes recipe books or, other books where they're teaching you about, creating a meal is they have a new meal that I've never eaten before. And so I have to now go think about where to get those ingredients and how to make this meal that does have all the nutrients, but it's not flavors my family likes or that I don't know if they're going to like it. And I don't want to make this giant lemon pasta to find out nobody likes it. And so one thing I really appreciated is you have examples of if you love a good hamburger and tater tot meal, great. Let's identify what you like, which is hamburgers and tater tots, and your kids like it, everybody likes it. But now let's assess that plate. And so going back to April's uncomplicated plate with 25% non-starchy vegetables, that doesn't really fit with hamburgers and tater tots. And so I love that you helped the reader understand, here's what you like. Great. Let's still eat that. But what do we need to bring to the plate to make this a balanced, nutritious meal? And
Mm-hmm.
I think that is a lot of people think, oh, this could be a great book, but I'm not willing to let go of what I like. And
Yep.
you said, I like what you like too.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
yeah, you're so right where I think a lot of nutrition information out there, whether it's books or online, the message that we receive is what we're doing is wrong and all of it needs to go away and we got to start over. And like, I know how much energy and brain function it takes to make any change. And so I want to make sure that the change that you're making, the time you're spending, the effort you're putting into this is going to give you the maximum results. You spending time wandering the grocery store aisle, trying to figure out where quinoa is located, if your son or daughter are going to like it. Do I need to rinse it? Do I have to cook it? Is it like, what is it and how do I do with it? That's not time well spent. If you love tater tots, we can figure out how to use some tater tots in there and yes, and make those adjustments to what you're currently doing. If you get a little wild hair and want to try a quinoa recipe, you now know how to pull it in. But that's not the requirement to expect people to go from what they're doing to this huge other extreme and still function in their job and still brush their teeth and still go on their nightly walk for their mental health, just do all these things. Like, that's not realistic. That's just setting us all up to feel like we're inadequate. And that's
And
what
then
I
we
hope
feel,
people have the opposite feeling of when they read this book.
I was going to say, and then when we feel inadequate, we sometimes eat our feelings. So really not
Yep.
working,
No.
not helpful
Mm-mm.
in the
Nope.
least. But yeah, I really like, she has a whole section on like adjusting your meal. So identifying what you like to eat, assessing how that fits on your plate, and then
Yep.
adjusting your plate to match to give you the best nutrients that your body needs. And I also really like this. My son is extremely picky. So we've really struggled in a couple of areas. One is protein.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that kind of more often lately that young kids are kind of like protein, like they're averting it? avoiding it?
So it's a lot of times, I mean, kids are I would say kids are weird. I mean this in the best way possible, right? Like I love my children and kids are amazing, but they're weird. And sometimes they have little things that they get, I don't say get stuck on or kind of focused on, little hurdles, little obstacles. And sometimes it's a texture thing, or I find a lot of times it's a texture thing. So it could be difficulty chewing the protein. It could be taste, but a lot of times I find that it's the texture of things. And so knowing that, then that's when again we can make some modifications. But it doesn't matter where your protein comes from. There's many sources and ways that we can do that, to pull in those nutrients.
We have had to kind of think outside the box of where else could we be getting protein? Because a
Mhm.
peanut butter and jelly sandwich, that peanut butter is just not enough as you are a 10-and-a-half-year-old boy who's active like crazy
Mhm.
town. So we've really supplemented or added a Greek yogurt, which he loves, to the plate. And so now we're getting a great amount of protein and he's able to consume it all and really enjoy it, even though he's not necessarily always having what we're having. But we're having great conversations with him about, oh, you want X, Y, and Z? That doesn't really fit with how much protein we need you to have tonight.
Yep.
So let's rethink, and now he's like an active participant in that. I think
Mhm.
another thing you did in the book really well is said, let's just keep adding to get to a full plate
Yes.
so that we can try new things, we can experience it, and then, again, assess and adjust as needed
Yep.
as kids are growing up too. So
For sure. And
that's
it's
really
all a learning process. And I think, kind of one thing to your point, if Landon feels the pressure that he has to eat this pork chop that he really doesn't like, kids don't get to control a whole lot of things in their world. And so if they can put boundaries up and control that moment, there's that battle that's happening where if you kind of erase the pressure and you're like, all right, dude, you're going to get your protein in. We're still having pork chops. If you'd like to give it a try, awesome. Like I tried this fun new sauce or this seasoning that I know that you like on this way. Give it a whirl, but if not, no big deal. It eases your pressure, your stress as a parent, and like, oh my goodness, my child's going to be deficient in something, and it allows him to feel safe in trying something new and to actually be nourished. Imagine that, right? If his brain and his body has actual energy and protein and vitamins and minerals, he's going to be a heck of a lot more agreeable and just in a better mind space when he's actually well fed instead of just fighting it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. I think there are a lot of parents out there that grew up in the 80s and the early 90s where you eat what you
Mhm.
are served or else you go to bed or else you don't get to eat anything else. And I understand that that sets some of us up for success, for trying new things, for finishing that meal. But I am so in the court of as long as they are eating good food, I'm not negotiating. I love that at the end of every chapter, you were able to throw in a couple different roasted
Mhm.
veggie versions and you gave seasoning ideas.
I hear people where one of the obstacles is I don't know how to make vegetables taste good. I don't know how to, experiment because we've never experimented before because like you said, well, what if my family doesn't like that? What if so taking something that you do like because another thing too like as a parent, you have to have time to think of a recipe. You have to have time to try a new seasoning. You have to have time, you have to do all these things. And so it's in the vegetable section here, the vegetables plus fiber. So if you take something you know that your family loves frozen green beans with salt and pepper made in the microwave. Awesome. Let's keep everything the same. And maybe you're going to take those same green beans and microwave them. And instead of putting salt and pepper on them, you're going to put that slap yo mama grill seasoning on it, right? Like something else. Or you're going to take, and instead of green beans, maybe you're going to substitute broccoli. And just a little thing can help ease some of that mental drain as whoever's doing the preparing of the food and coming up with the food. And it can also help people who are a little pickier of eaters like Landon say, oh, well, I do enjoy green beans when mom makes them when they're frozen. Like, what if I just tried them with a different seasoning? That doesn't seem too scary and crazy. And so it just has benefits from both avenues to kind of look at things a little bit differently and take something that you're comfortable with, you enjoy, and just step slightly to the side.
Yeah. And again, talking about confidence, if I know I'm confident that our family likes broccoli, but I had never, so just recently I started putting the broccoli, head side down in boiling water and then sauteing it in a seasoning after that. Delicious. Like all of us loved it. And it was just not something we had ever done before. We had always either done frozen broccoli in the microwave or
Mm-hmm.
raw broccoli. The end. Those were the two types of broccoli we had done. And so trying it in this new way, it was exciting. And everybody liked it. They were like, why don't we do it this way every time? Right. And so just this idea of I was confident we would like broccoli, but now I've got some
Mm-hmm.
time. I'm going to make it this way and see what we think. And so
Mm-hmm.
offering variety without having to have Brussels sprouts and beans and broccoli and cauliflower and this and this and this and trying to go to the store and buy all that
Yep.
and hope and pray that your kids like asparagus. I loved this idea that you had in that vegetable section of like, maybe let's just try to prepare it a different way. Then let's try it with olive oil instead of
Mm-hmm.
butter. Then let's try it with this seasoning instead of this
Mm-hmm.
one. And like you said, just get to play. And I think too, my kids' confidence will go up
Yep.
in their I like blank because they've had it many different ways and can kind of, feel empowered to say what they do like or excited that they like something even though it's done a different way, which I think is exciting as a parent raising a 12 and 10-year-old. Like
Yep.
they're learning these things now and they're learning about building their own plates. I was just knowing we were going to have this podcast interview today. I was just talking to Brian about this last night of I can just see when Ella gets home from school, she is like thinking through what she can have. And she always starts with a piece of fruit. Then she usually grabs some sort of protein, right? And she's like thinking about grabbing carrots instead of, I want chips, I want cookies, I want, right? Like she doesn't even think
Mm-hmm.
about it that way
Mm-hmm.
because it's just been how we've discussed food. And I
Yeah.
think that's another piece, right? So we're not at the end of this episode, but I do ask at the end of the episode a lot of times, like, what if this works? Like, what if you as a parent get really confident in how to uncomplicate your plate and it
Mm-hmm.
passes down generations?
Mm-hmm.
That now Ella, when she is raising kids, she's never had a complicated plate because she has been given these skills and this knowledge as it goes. And, just again, generally, generationally, what does that look like? So I think that's exciting to think about too.
All these things make my heart so happy, right? So like as I'm writing this book, there's all these hopes. Like I hope people get this out of this. I hope people don't feel like this is complicated. That would be like the worst thing that could have come from this. As I had some beta readers, some test readers kind of in my target demographic before the book was totally finished. I'm like, I want you to read this to make sure I'm on the right path. And I was just waiting and waiting and waiting for this feedback. And I'm like, okay, April, like what's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? And for me, the worst case scenario was for them to come back and say, lady, I could never do this. Or, oh, it just seems like so much. But when that feedback came back of like, oh my gosh, like I can do this. This is a step. I don't have to learn how to waltz overnight. I'm going to learn how to put my tap shoes on. Or, you know what I mean? Like, I'm
Yeah.
going to learn a step. And I'm like, okay, like what I had wanted people to feel was that sense of calm, that sense of confidence, that sense of like, I'm in charge of my food. The world is not just throwing things at me and I'm just going to try to pick things up as I'm zipping through it. Like, I'm the authority on the food that I'm eating and I'm making the decisions that I want to make with knowledge in what I'm putting in my body and the result that it's going to give me and my family.
Yeah. I was just thinking about that of really thinking about how we can be focused on the end result. Here's the action steps, and you can be confident in the end result, which I do a lot of work with people who are trying to get, clear on what kind of culture they want to create. And a lot of times they have an idea, but they don't really know the action steps, and they don't really know what a new actions, what result they will get. And so we do a lot of clarifying, well, what do you want? And so I feel like for your readers, what do you want? Well, I want to be calm. I want to be confident, but I also want to be putting good food in my body and my kids' bodies so we can feel great. Good. Now, here are some action steps to take. And you don't, love your metaphor, have to learn the waltz overnight. Take one new step. And then when you get confident in that, you build on another step. The other thing I really want to make sure that listeners understand is that you also, I'm showing it if you're watching it on video, give worksheets so that people, as they're reading, this becomes a workbook. And love that you state that so clearly in the beginning. You're like, listen, this is meant for you to write in. This is meant for you to engage with. This is meant for you to work with so that you can strengthen your knowledge and, again, get ready to apply it. But these workbook pages are so great. And then the fact that you added QR codes at the end so that you can go print off blank pages, because I could see me, right? I don't like to write in things if I don't have more space to keep it. And so
Yeah.
when I saw that you had extra workbook pages, I'm like, sweet, now I can write in this and I can have more and we're all going to be okay.
Yes.
So such a
Permission
great
to do it
addition.
messy, permission to try, permission to just, and mark what works for you, but you have to practice, you have to do it. And yes, so I love that you felt the permission, you felt empowered to to go. You weren't hesitant to try it because you didn't want your pretty book to be messed up and what if I wanted more and like
Yes,
you get as many copies as you want.
yes. That was such a neat idea because I do think some of us want to get started with something, but if we can't continue to do it, it might go by the wayside. And so the ability to just write from your phone, grab that QR code and, even put it in your phone and write on it in there, I thought was so great. All right, part 3. So we built our plate, we meal planned. I want to tell you that I don't know that I have separated the difference between meal planning and meal prepping. I think in my head, I do it all at the same time. Like, I think it's overwhelming because in my head, I do it at the same time. But what you're saying is, no, you're not. You're planning it. Then you're going to that grocery store, you're getting the food you need, and then you're prepping it. And I also love that your book did not say, and you need to do this on Sunday night before you go to bed, have everything ready, chopped, cut, cooked, spend your Sundays sweating in the kitchen so that Monday through Friday can be happy. Um, Once again, you kind of talk about like, look at your week. Now let's fit in that meal prep.
Our schedules dictate our life so much. So if we can find these things to really work smartly with the minutes we have, and that might not mean cooking on Sunday, because full disclosure, Sundays are leftover days at my house. I don't do much cooking on Sundays because I just need a day to take out of the kitchen, right? But one of my favorite time hacks that I use a lot, and I think people we don't tend to think about it because we think about meal prep as I'm making a meal from start to finish and then going to eat it. Or we think about freezer meals that we make everything on Sunday, do, like you said, all of the cutting and chopping and browning of meat and things on Sunday for the whole week. And that's a level of commitment that many people either can't take because their schedule doesn't allow it or are so overwhelmed with spending 3 hours in the kitchen on Sunday. And they're like, where am I going to put all this chopped celery? I don't know what to do with it or how many cups of celery do I need? Where one of my favorite time hacks is actually kind of in that mobile meal realm where you cut up and bulk prep ingredients as you need them. So that might mean browning some ground beef for tacos for tomorrow night, maybe after I get home at 8 o'clock, or maybe when I'm cooking the pork chop that I'm going to try not to overcook so Mr. Landon wants to eat it, right? Like just doing some of that cutting and chopping. Or maybe we're going to have tacos and I'm going to chop some of the lettuce up tonight for tomorrow, or just some of those, that ingredient prep. So you use the minutes you have, knowing that there's not going to be minutes tomorrow afternoon because tomorrow is really tight with all the different pieces that we have, and it's just not going to work into my schedule. So I think, again, kind of breaking apart the meals and giving yourself permission to do things a little unconventionally. We don't have to be June Cleaver and cook from start to finish, and we don't have to be kind of prepping for the apocalypse and get it all done on Sunday.
I interrupt this podcast to let you know that I have a special treat for you. I want to make sure that those of you that are interested in getting Uncomplicate Your Plate, that you are able to do that. And I wanted to do a giveaway for those of you who purchase your Uncomplicate Your Plate book in the month of April. You will go into a drawing for a free set of her favorite mobile meal containers. There is an entire chapter dedicated to mobile meals, how to make them, how to get creative with them, what to add and subtract. And they're so incredible. And I know that it's going to help those of you that are extremely busy. And so here's what you need to do to get entered. You're going to jump on over to Facebook, go to the Impact to Influence Facebook page, and look for this podcast episodes graphic. And in the post, you'll see how you can grab her book, the link to that. And then underneath that post, you'll simply let me know that you purchased a copy and you will be in the running for a free set of mobile meal dishes. I am so excited and so proud of April and want everyone who wants a copy to go out there and grab this today. So go grab your copy and go get entered into our mobile meal container giveaway. All right, back to the interview. I wanted to make sure I did not end this podcast episode without hearing the name of your slow cooker. So years ago, maybe during the pandemic, you were obviously doing a lot of slow cooker meals on social media. So just like showing us what she was making. And again, when I talk about like I've been watching April for this reason, is I think some of us get stuck in our heads, or we're used to what our parents fed us, or we're used to just what we've always done. And so to see someone take a new idea, you're like, what? What is she doing? And she would always bring out her slow cooker and tell us about her. So tell us about your slow cooker.
I do love my slow cooker because she is one of our time hack solutions here. And I actually gave her a name because she works very hard while my family is at work. She's kind of our personal chef, and I named her Kate. So when kids kind of ask, I'm like, no, we didn't have slow cooker, right? That sounds like crock pot slow cooker. Everyone has an envision of like what kind of bland food that will be. You're like, no, hon, Kate cooked tonight and she made us carnitas, right? Like you just sound fancy, and I think you're just more appreciative. Like, thank you, Kate. When I walked into my house after work, it smelled delicious. I got dishes tonight, Kate. Thank you for cooking. Appreciate you so much, dear. Right? Like it
I
just,
love it.
yeah, it just kind of elevates the fun and takes that, because we don't use slow cookers because we have all this extra time and life is just really open and lovely and amazing. Most of the time we use a slow cooker because we're feeling a little like we need some help. So Kate to the
And
rescue.
if you have an extra 5 minutes in the morning to throw it in, your future self will thank you. I've been realizing just literally little tiny things as I walk around my house, like restocking my fridge. And then the next day, I'm like, oh, shoot, I just bought that yesterday. And I open my fridge and I'm like, oh, thank you yesterday, Anne. Like, look at you. So I love this idea. So I love this idea of like giving my, crock pot a name of just like, thank you, Kate. I
Yes.
appreciate you, It's so fun. And I do appreciate the fun that you have with your meals and showcasing to us. Now, do you have an Instagram for Uncomplicate Your Plate?
Yep. So it's at Uncomplicate Your Plate. There's underscores between each of the words. So uncomplicate underscore your underscore plate, where I do show a lot of my mobile meals. So those again are the meals that you bring where you're at. You don't have to be where the food's at. You bring the food to you, because that's a lot of what life looks like with kind of the current life and situation that I'm in. But it's also a place that if you do have questions or feedback or suggestions or ideas, that I would love to connect with everybody. It gives me, again, that feedback and that knowledge of what's working, what isn't working, and how I can best be of service.
So I just want everybody to envision what a mobile meal is. So I grew up hitting the road with my family on family vacation, and there were buns with butter, with turkey put into a bag and put on top of the freezer, and some fruit and some vegetables. And man, we did a 12-hour road trip where we were just eating out of the back. And so, what I love about your mobile meals that I'd love for you to share just a little bit about is these are like complete meals for the most part. This is not um, like a charcuterie. You could do that, but that when I think of your mobile meals, they're like fully nutritious meals. And April puts them in these cute little bowls with a cover and carries, has them ready for her children either before they have their event or afterwards. And again, you're maybe eating in the car on the way home, but you're going to get home late. And so this is a way for you to get nourishment when you need it, which I really, really appreciate. But tell us a little bit more about mobile meals, because I don't know that everybody uses that term in the same way.
No, so yeah, mobile meals really was my kind of coined phrase of like the category of life that we're living in. So those mobile meals, like you said, I just use I use dishwasher safe containers because nobody wants to do dishes at 8:30 at night. And we take the different components of that first part of the book with the vegetables, the protein, and the carbohydrates. And there's even a mobile meal guide that's in the book, and then one that you can download the QR code just so, and you can, write all over it if you want. But they are kind of like a grain bowl, if you will. So you'll have a really great base. So it might be your rice. And then you turn that, instead of having a taco that you're not going to try to eat in the car while you're going around, we turn that into a taco bowl. So you have all the different components of those meals. And just a helpful tip. And I think I put that in the book. I'm pretty sure I did. If I didn't, I guess version two will come out with that. But to make them pretty, because when you're eating in that rush, you do like, I feel a little like I deserve a treat, right? Like I work really hard. I want something nice. It just don't, right? So I have found that if you keep your ingredients separated, so let's go back to that taco salad bowl. If you put your rice on one part and don't put the rice in the middle and then plop everything else messy on top, you got your cute rice, and then you're like, oh, here's my lettuce, here's my tomato, here's my meat, here's my cheese, and you just kind of keep it separate. One, it helps you keep the ratios of how much of my plate is carbohydrate based, how much of it is vegetable based, how much of it is protein based. But I don't know if it's that, like when we look at closets and everything separated in rainbow order, or I don't know what it is visually, because I'm a pretty
Aesthetic.
chaotic person. I like chaos visually, as evidenced by like my chaotic shirt and the art behind me. But just maybe it's the peace and calm in that chaotic world. But you separate your ingredients and it just feels like, again, like Kate, the private chef, she did a banging job and really made that meal great. So, yes, those
Yes.
mobile meals are complete meals, and there are lots of exact examples of options that you can pull in, listing out specific vegetables and carbohydrates and proteins. And I call them crunchies and extras, something to make it fun and flavorful so you don't get bored. And then also a guide so that you can kind of make your own adventure book for taking it to go, so that you don't feel, again, like you're lather, rinse, repeating the same three meals over and over again.
Yeah. And I just think about your kids getting that meal from you as they get to the cross country meet or, whatever it is. And it's not a bun with butter with a slice of turkey in it and five carrot
Yeah.
sticks and an apple. and you're like, okay, go sit over there and eat. It's like this beautiful mobile meal with the dressing in the little cup, so that they can enjoy that. And again, if the goal of food, which, okay, you have a line in here about we are an overfed country that's undernourished. And I think these mobile meals are such a great example about what's your goal when you eat. It is to provide nourishment and energy. And if I give you a giant baguette of bread with one or two little pieces of cheese and lunch meat, that's not going to necessarily give you the nourishment and the energy that you are going to need to be your best self. And we've talked a lot about going to kids sports, but I know there are a lot of you on these calls, you're going to evening meetings, you're running boards, or you're a part of a board, and it starts at 6 and your job ends at 5, and it takes you 30 minutes to get over there. And so you are in that fast food line and you are shoving your face full of whatever you can get your hands on, because your priority is to get to that meeting. But what April is trying to tell you is make your priority nourishing your body so that when you're at that meeting, you are at your very best, right? You're not hangry. You're
Yeah.
not frustrated that you're there.
Yeah.
You're excited to be there, and you're excited to give them the strengths that you have, which puts you on that board or puts you in that
Yeah.
leadership position, which I think is so
Absolutely.
important.
You can
Um,
show up fully.
you could show up fully. Oh, that's so funny. That's my last thing I wrote on my little note page was show up fully. All right. What if it works, April? People grab this book, they take in the knowledge and they start applying it. What are they going to gain?
I think it goes back to that. What if you're able to show up fully to that work meeting? What if you are able to be present in the moment because you're not thinking about, do I have a granola bar in my purse? Is my stomach hungry? I'm feeling a little lightheaded and shaky. What if your child learns a new way of eating and separates some of that emotional pressure and triggers and can eat for the fuel they want? Like, what if you could be the best you, right? What if you provided your body with everything it needs to serve you in a way to accomplish what you want out of life? If that is nailing that board meeting, getting the account, being not hangry, right? Showing up happy and fulfilled and cheering on your people, being the support that you want. What if you could be that person, the best version of yourself, simply by providing your body with the food that it needs?
And I just think about, what if you don't have the 2 o'clock crash because you grab something quick for lunch? What if you aren't telling your kids to leave you alone because you have to prep for an hour in the kitchen and you're hungry yourself and you're frustrated and you're, trying to look at a recipe, and that's not fun either. And so what if you can be calm at those meal times so that you can connect with your kids? And what if you can be showing up for your child to get nourishment so that they can, again, be successful at that big game, and you are feeling nourished and ready to watch that big game too, not waiting for the moments to tick down so that you can get home and get that meal. I just think there's so many benefits. And yes, you may have to switch what you're doing. But another quote that I believe I learned from you, Miss April, is if
Okay.
nothing changes, nothing changes. And so
Yeah.
if you are listening to this episode today and you are thinking about, I want to feel that way. I want to feel nourished. I want to be calm at night. I want to enjoy letting my kids chop vegetables with me, and I'm not stressed to meet a deadline to get that done. This is the book for you. Again, it is Uncomplicate Your Plate by Miss April Graff. And grab your book today, get it by the end of April, and let me know on that Facebook post, and you'll be entered to grab some mobile meals, the bowls and the lids, and you will be able to be confident out eating your meal in that parking lot before that big event so that you are nourished and ready to go. Thank you so much, April, not only for being here today, but for writing this book, for letting your passion for helping people, right? You do that all the time as a dietitian. You could have just said, come get advice from me and I'll give it to you. Instead, you put it all out in this book for all of us to grab and read and apply and truly change our lives. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you for having me. It's been a joy.
Always. What an inspiration. I love this idea that April knew that she had information and a way to serve others and therefore wrote this book today. And I just want to encourage all of you who are sitting there listening and thinking about how you have gifts that you could share to the world. I want to encourage you to do that. Let April be your inspiration today. Someone who has taken her skills and taken her knowledge and is now serving others in that same way. Shine a light on your skills and let the world see and feel and have what you have to offer. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening to the What If It Works podcast. I'm your host, Ann Vogt, and I am so grateful you are here learning and listening and getting out there and creating change.